Hey guys, my name is Zachary, and today we're going to be talking about Proposition 58, California Multilingual Education Act of 2016. So let's go ahead and jump into that. Okay. So it's important that before we can jump into 58, we have to understand Proposition 227. In 1998, there was 1.4 million ELS students. And in response to that, the California legislature proposed that we were to require all public education to be conducted in English only. The rationale for this was that teaching in any language besides English would actually confuse students, which has later been debunked on multiple studies all over. When students are young, they're sponges, and actually being exposed to multiple languages helps the transfer of knowledge, and it turns out to be an extremely beneficial act for students to have. That also being said, there was a little bit of English-only sentiment fueled by prejudice during this time. So this bill was proposed to try to kind of further that agenda. It was also understood or misunderstood that students needed to understand and be fluent in English before they could be taught content in English, which has later also been debunked, that they can do them at the same time, concurrently, rather than independently. 227 will be covered by another group, so we're not going to get into it any more than that, but it's just important that you have that little bit of background so that we can move forward with it. So let's move this over here. Proposition 58 now, the California Multilingual Act of 2016, it passed overwhelmingly with 73% people voting in favor of it. It simply overturned Prop 227. Instead of mandating English-only immersion classes, it allowed local school districts to decide how English learners would be taught and in what degree bilingual education would be introduced into their curriculum. This proved to, or it was proposed that English learners would retain more information this way and actually comprehend the content more effectively. And it also gave the communities that wanted bilingual education a legal route to get there. Before, we couldn't actually even teach classes in a second language. They all had to be taught in English. So this just opened up some of those restrictions that Prop 227 actually imposed on education. Let's move this guy over here a little bit. So how did it work? There was a zero mandate. Before, Sacramento basically imposed that all education had to be done in English, and regardless of whatever the local districts needed. So it's just kind of like one size fits all. And 58 basically eliminated that singularity approach and allowed local districts to make those decisions about what immersion classes look like and how to teach ELS students. Local districts could design programs that fit their specific community's needs. And the only mandate that was even required was if a community had enough support or enough desire to see those types of classes, the district was required to then implement a plan and entertain the idea of what bilingual courses would look like. So in short, it basically allowed school districts to decide whether or not they wanted bilingual courses to be taught. And left it all up to the individual districts rather than Sacramento as a whole passing it down. So now we're going to jump on over to Cheyenne, and she's going to go ahead and continue forward with us.
Hi guys, my name is Cheyenne. I'm going to take it from here. So I'm just going to talk about who is in support of Proposition 58. So in support of, or the reversal of Proposition 227, we had the Democratic parties and a lot of the school unions in California. Specific individuals include Senator Ricardo Lara, who I have a photo of down below, Senator Lonnie Hannock, and Senator Bill Monning, and Senator Martin Block. So in opposition to this proposition was primarily just the Republican Party and the Libertarian Party of California alongside Representative Tom McClintock. To be honest, there was no significant opposition to this reversal. There wasn't much funding either, but just for a little background, the primary idea that was the opposing team was that relaxing measures on standardized English would actually inhibit English learning. A little bit more of what Zach was originally saying. They argued that English lesson programs should be authorized privately by parents. Wasn't to say that they shouldn't still exist, but just that they wouldn't be necessarily funded by the school. They would be a little more specific to parent involvement. However, the reversal of Prop 227 allows this decision to be made by the district and local level. So it doesn't actually even formally declare anything. It just gives more decisions and more choice and more authority to the local districts and allows them to make decisions based off their own needs. Another concern was that there weren't enough teachers to teach these additional bilingual classes. During this time, in 2016, when this Proposition 58 was enacted, there was an incredibly high number of teacher shortages, especially in bilingual classes. But a lot of schools made this work by having schools be half days, as in half the classes for the day would be taught in Spanish and half the classes for the day would be taught in English. They kind of made it work. They just figured it out, and it's done pretty successfully so far. It's thought to be done pretty successfully so far in the districts that have implemented this decision. But the overall impacts on language acquisition, diverse cultures, instruction, and teachers is a little difficult to say, as this proposition was only enacted 4 years ago. And it's also difficult to say because not all schools are making the same decision. Because this proposition gave choice to the local districts, the impact is going to depend on what those local decisions were. So any and all potential impacts are going to be quite unique. The only formal difference we were able to notice was a statement by the California Legislative Analyst and Director of Finance, was that there was no fiscal effect on school or districts or state governments. So all in all, there's nothing really to prove yet, but we are hopeful because it still is quite a recent piece of legislation. So I think that's it. Thank you all for watching.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Any questions, please leave them below and we'll be glad to answer them.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.